Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Love Fruit podcast. Today, I am very happy to be joined by a friend, Seth Bailin. Seth is, among many other things, a fantastically talented musician, but also an author of this book, which I have right here. Hopefully, this might be coming as a mirror image, the wrong way around, but it is the Fruit Companion, your reference guide to the most common fruits from acai to zucchini, Seth Bailin. Nice little guide like that, fit it in your pocket. And Seth is also a woodstocker, someone that's been to the Woodstock Festival a lot. He has a growing interest in um, fruit farming and potentially uh, going into that more full time, and is an avid author, researcher of, I would call it, natural hygiene information, alternative health information, and so on and so forth. So that's a that's my description of you, Seth, from what I know so far. He also has a great personality, is what I would say. Um, so Seth, is there anything you want to say about yourself to give people a picture of who you are?
Well, first, just thanks for having me on your show. I enjoy listening to it, and I love all the guests you have on, and just really happy to be here. So thank you. And let's see, anything about myself. I mean, it's sort of been a lifelong journey to get to where I'm at. Um, there doesn't seem to be really one necessarily one event that sparked any type of change. It's every day, I come more into the alignment with nature, I'd like to think. That's sort of been what my whole life has been about. But it started really, really early on as I was a sick kid with asthma, allergies, and also parents in the Western medical industry. So I guess that's sort of where it all began is dealing with these health issues, which I think ultimately was a blessing because it allowed me to, well, it forced me to have to read ingredients on everything I was eating. And I think that's a huge thing in the journey of trying to live healthy, right? We need like severe awareness and discernment, and like reading all the packaging, reading as much as we can about what we're putting in our mouths, where it came from. And I guess I just want to say we can start with this. Yeah, I'm grateful for the challenges I grew up with, having severe asthma, chronic asthma, on the nebulizer, on all sorts of drugs, on pills and in multiple inhalers, and also having allergies, being allergic to nuts. I had to just read everything. And so it's funny. I think a lot of people who come into this raw food movement were almost forced to because of some health issues. Not everybody, but that's a common theme that I see. And so I'm definitely in that boat where maybe if I grew up without any concern about what I was eating and how I felt, then I wouldn't be spurred so intensely to learn about this lifestyle and practice it. So yeah, maybe that's just a good little
Yeah,
thing to lead off with, like the challenges, maybe.
yeah, and that's an interesting point you're making, that a number of people have ended up changing their diet at some point in their life, but they've had an experience maybe earlier on of whether it's health issues or things that made them look at their diet directly earlier on, um, which might have been a catalyst for making some of those changes later. And
Hmm.
I'd like to know, what was your lifestyle like? How were you brought up? What was the
Hmm.
kind of diet you were on growing up, and anything else you want to add to that?
For sure. Yeah, I grew up outside Boston, Massachusetts, in a suburb of Boston, and amazing childhood that I remember. I had a lot of freedom to travel around the neighborhood and go out with my friends and sort of explore and get into trouble. And I really value my upbringing. As far as food, my mom cooked every night. She really was still is an amazing cook, and taught me how to cook and taught me all about food. And but it was a lot of bread, a lot of wheat, a lot of meat, a lot of animal products, a lot of milk every day, you know. And there was one point in my life, in my late 20s, I think, where I realized that I think I've had wheat every single day of my life. You know, after a certain age, after I finished breastfeeding and was like eating things like bread, if I wasn't having some sort of gluten or flour for breakfast in the cereal or toast, then it was in the bread for lunch. And if it wasn't in that, it was in the pasta and the rolls for dinner. Or if it wasn't in that, it was in the breading of the chicken or whatever. So there was, almost 3 decades in to life and going, I haven't even been one day without this stuff. And so that was another sort of like weird perspective shift. I'm like, all right, let's see if I can go without this stuff. And then the cravings come in, and you realize how attached you were to this cultural practice that we inherit. You know, we don't even necessarily decide.
Yeah.
Nobody decides what they eat as a kid. They're fed. So yeah, just to answer your question, just that we ate standard stuff and a lot of packaged food and a lot of ultra processed food. Now, my parents were conscious and wouldn't allow us to, we weren't out getting fast food all the time. They weren't stocking the place with candy and too many chips. You know, my parents had some idea of health and whole food based things, but they were born in the 50s, and that culture is always, has inherited a narrative and a culture themselves, which was heavily based around processed food, supermarkets, canned food, a lot of canned food. So, we're just coming into life, and culture gives us the recipes and the practices. And so, for my whole life, I was just eating what the culture taught me to eat, which is meat, bread. And then I got into, in my 20s, I got into Ayurveda. And, I thought that was really cool because they're mindful. They have a lot of different ideas than the mainstream. But one of them is that for Vata body types like me, which in Western medicine is known as, what would that be, an endomorph? Anyways, it's the tall, wiry, skinny one that can't really put on fat no matter how hard you try. That's my body type. And in Ayurveda, they say you want lots of oil, cooked foods, heavy food, grounding, fatty foods, especially in the beginning and the end of the day, easier on digestion. So I was playing with that for a while until it just made me more sick. And that's around this time I started getting worse anxiety, getting pretty severe anxiety and skin issues. And that's when I was kind of forced to really keep digging and figure out something else. I've always been attracted to fruits, though. This is interesting. They're funny because my mom likes to tell this story. When she would bring my two brothers and I to the grocery store, she would say, go ahead and pick out one thing. Each of you can get one thing, whatever you want, special treat. My younger brother might get the Dunkaroos, which is like cookies and frosting. And then my older brother might get candy. And I'd be grabbing the orange pepper from the produce. I was like, I want this bell pepper. And so I was always attracted to colorful fruits and vegetables. As a young kid, when my mom was feeding my brothers and me like ramen noodles from the package, but feeding herself and my dad like chicken and a salad, I said, I want adult food. I don't want this stuff. I want adult food. I want what you guys are eating. So I don't know if it was having the allergies, being forced to think more about food than the average person, or what it was, or if it was just a natural inclination that the bright, colorful food always appealed to me. So that was always in the undercurrent of my life. I've always sort of been just attracted or vibrating with the frequency of like natural, organic food. And I think that just really helped out for where I'm at today, putting fruits at the forefront and the center of my lifestyle. I hesitate to say the word diet. It has the word die in it. It's a whole thing. My lifestyle, just what I eat to thrive right now is majority juicy fruits and delicious
It's funny,
plant-based food.
people don't. I've said to people, I've talked to them about their diet, and they say I'm not on a diet, right? And I'm like, because people think diet means a weight loss program. I think
Right.
a lot of people, that's what they. So when I say your diet, they go, I'm not on a diet. It's like,
Right.
you are on a diet. You
So
don't.
what's another word for that? Or should we just be okay with using the word diet?
Yeah, I don't know. I think eating style. I don't know.
Yeah, your eating practices.
Your eating practice. Yeah, yeah. Uh, so um, you know, you talked about some health issues.
Hmm.
I want to go into that a bit more. So when did these start happening? What was the symptoms? What are some of the experiences you had? And was this when you were quite young? What age sort of thing did this happen?
Yeah, I think the asthma started right away. I think as soon as I came out, the day of my birth, I had, green tint in my skin, and there was something going on in my lungs, some obstruction. They had to pull me into intensive care, I think, and my mom worked in the um, preemie wing of the hospital, like she was a nurse, worked with premature babies, and so she could recognize like a healthy baby and one that looked like it needed help, and I was one that needed a little help right when I was born. So I think the asthma, I just came out with it. I think there was some genetic inheritance or obstruction. I don't know, but I've always had, as long as I could remember, from the very littlest, very oldest memories, I've had been struggling with asthma. The allergies popped up around age 4. My mom had me, crunch up walnuts on the kitchen counter with my fist just to break them up for the whatever we were eating that night. And I leave the room and I came back. I said, "Mom, I'm itchy." And I came back and my eyes were all red. My whole face was red. My eyes were puffed up. My hands were all puffed up and red. And she's like, "Oh my God, what is going on?" Took me to get the tests, and yeah, allergic to, all nuts basically. So that was age 4.
Is that still the case?
Um,
Still,
is that still
you still allergic to nuts?
I think so. I haven't tested it.
Okay.
Um, I used to be really afraid of even touching them, but lately, the person whose house I live in, he feeds the birds every morning, and he has these peanuts and these seeds. And one week he had me feed the birds every morning, and I looked at the. He said, one handful of peanuts here, one handful of peanuts over here. He's got all these places to feed the birds and the squirrels, which is really nice. But so I'm like, okay, this is the first time I actually like put my hand in a big bag of peanuts and picked them up, and it was almost, I was like, let's just see what this does to me. And I washed my hands after. Nothing happened. There was no skin irritation. So, I don't know. I don't know when I'll test to see if I'm still allergic to peanuts or nuts, but I'm cool with just not consuming the ones that I might be allergic to. I eat hemp seeds, sesame, tahini, uh, almonds sometimes, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, chia, flax. So like to me that can cover the bases if I feel like I need more nuts and seeds in my diet. Um, and yeah, I do understand people grow out of their nut allergies. I did have a reaction in the last 5 years, but that was before I really even started changing my diet to mostly raw food. So yeah, I don't know if I'm still allergic. Definitely the asthma went, it totally reversed. As soon as I started juicing and incorporating more fruit and stopping the eggs and the cheese and the bread for breakfast, then the asthma cleared up like crazy. I haven't used my inhaler in 2.5 years, and I used to use it every day. I needed to, like, I was a rescue inhaler. I couldn't breathe, and
That's amazing.
it's
What could you be more specific about like what did you cut out of your diet for your asthma to go away? Was it did you go vegan? What was it exactly? Sorry, I didn't pick that up.
no, yeah. So I did a 3-day juice cleanse before I went vegan, before I went high raw, but I was learning about it and I was curious and I had seen people's solid food vacations. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna try this. And it was that 3rd day of a solid food vacation that I realized, ooh, okay, I can breathe amazing. My sinuses are clear. I don't need the inhaler. And so basically I cut out everything except for sweet juices at that one point. But um, then shortly after, I decided to go vegan and high raw the same day. So yeah, I cut out eggs and cheese, which I was relying on a lot for my protein. I thought I needed all that. I was eating a lot of bread. I was eating a lot of cooked food, cooked potatoes and root vegetables like every morning sometimes. Lots of cheese, lots of fat, because I was still into that Ayurveda idea of needing that for my body type. But as soon as I saw all the testimonials and saw all these transformations online, I was so inspired. I said, you know what? And I finally saw the film Earthlings, and that made me say, wow, you know, what are we doing to these animals? Like Earthlings is such a powerful film. It was so transformative for me. So it really broke me down and forced me to reconcile my entire life. So yeah, after those experiences, I said, let's go vegan and fruit for breakfast, like high raw fruit for breakfast, smoothies or salad for lunch, whatever you want for dinner type of thing. And that's when the asthma started to just disappear. So I think it's hydration and removing a lot of the fat and cooked starches. I think that was
Just
some of the big parts of it.
just out of interest, so that was something you had all your life, asthma, and
Yes.
it went away like in a few days, basically.
Yeah, and I read a book called Reversing Asthma, and they're talking about magnesium and taking all these supplements. And yeah, there's all these ideas about how to reverse it, but the best way is like so hidden. It's so esoteric. It's so occulted. It's like, why is the raw food movement so fringe? People think it's so extreme, but don't you think thousands of dollars a year on medication is extreme? Don't you think surgery and living in pain is extreme? You
Yeah.
know, and destroying our food with high temperatures, filling it with preservatives, not even like regular preservatives like salt and vinegar. We're talking like synthetic, you know, citric acid made from black mold, like all these crazy, weird, you know, titanium dioxide. I was diagnosed with a titanium dioxide allergy as a kid. I don't even know what it's in Play-Doh, some toothpaste. It's like we're just we're just filling all of our food with preservatives.
Yeah, so
So
that and no one had ever said to you anything about diet, doctors and so on when it comes to asthma.
not that I can remember. No, because I had an asthma doctor, like I had a specialist I would go to, and they would do all the tests. And pretty much every time the test would say, "Well, Seth, you got weak lungs. You know, you got little, you know, on the low end of lung capacity. And do these exercises. You know, play a little more basketball, like a little more cardio." And nothing really seemed to help until I just stopped eating eggs and cheese and bread, started eating oranges and apples and watermelon for breakfast, and rehydrating the body. I started drinking a gallon of water a day. And yeah, I think it just comes down to obstruction and rehydrating the body, getting those obstructions out, which the body can do naturally. That's the beauty of it, is that you don't have to actually do anything to heal. You just have to let the body do its own thing under the proper conditions. So
Yeah, I've just
in
become
this,
sorry. Sorry, keep
I
going.
should I'll just mention real quick that I'll asthma triggers can happen for me if I overeat, especially cooked food, because I'm still navigating the journey to raw food, and you know, sometimes I'll still eat cooked, and that can trigger just like some low level asthma. But then I'm like, okay, there's the threshold. Back off. You know, return to the hydration proclamation tomorrow, and keep learning from this. Every time I put food in my mouth, it's like I learned something new. It's amazing.
It's amazing, yeah. And I'm looking at like I just thought I would Google asthma CDC, which I think is the American Center of Disease Control, asthma, National Institutes of Health,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just to see if it said anything about diet being a part of it or anything. And I can't see it's saying any connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's fascinating. And a lot of people have uh now that I think about it, a lot of people say I had asthma that went away
Mm-hmm.
when I went vegan, when I went raw and all that. Yeah, it's amazing. I honestly I think people completely underestimate the effect that food has. And it's funny that because it's the one thing we directly put in our body that goes into our body, that goes into our bloodstream, that goes into our brain and all that stuff. And people completely underestimate the effect it has. It's so funny.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why people need to go through it experientially. They need to experience the change in the body before they're going to buy into any of these philosophies. I'll talk to my family and friends and they're like, cool story, man. I can even tell them, listen, I reversed lifelong chronic asthma and you can too. Like you also have that. Like, do you want to try this? And they're like, yeah, but eggs, but cheese. And it's like, okay, you will never understand until you do it for yourself.
Yeah, so I just Googled what causes asthma, right? And there's a whole list of like what causes asthma on Google. I don't think it even says there's like 20 things. It doesn't say diet. I can't even say it. It says exercise, pollution, cigarette smoke, mold, allergies, pharmaceutical drugs, sinusitis, weather, dust mites, common cold, smoking, respiratory infection, intense emotions, parents, heartburn. Like it doesn't say not one place that say diet. That's
Right. And I think all those are triggers. I think a lot of times people get triggers confused with cause,
right.
but they're hugely different. A cause is underlying. It's if we remove the underlying cause, which is poor diet, then the asthma is going to go away. But even if you try removing all these triggers, exercise, smoking, stress, there's still going to be the underlying cause. And until you get rid of that, there's no chance in ever dealing with your symptoms.
I mean, at least some of the other things they do say diet has an impact. They don't say diet is the cause, but with asthma, it's like they're not even making any connection, and that's so fascinating to me. Like we live in this world of like people talk about the Matrix or conspiracies and all that. I just think there's something about food where people just don't want to even consider it's a problem. Like, yeah, it's amazing. Anyway, so
Totally. Well, because it's so attached to their identity and their culture,
yeah,
which are two things that are just really ingrained in people's identity. And yeah, it's almost like I heard a quote, it's easier to get someone to change their religion than it is to get them to change their diet.
yeah.
And religion is even something that's really tied into people's identity.
Well,
But like you said, diet goes into your cells, you're taking it into your body and is one with you.
I would definitely argue that more people change religion than change diet. Like there's many people that will stop being religious, grow up religious, but don't remain religious. But there's not that many people that grow up and sort of change their diet significantly. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about that. And as
Yeah.
you mentioned about culture, it's a part of people's culture, and that's a big reason that people struggle with changing their diet. And like to me, what you mentioned earlier on, the processed foods and stuff, I think that what happened or what has happened is food manufacturers, food companies were without any restriction were allowed to advertise heavily and change the culture. And I think that people don't realize that like being a glutton wasn't a part of our culture. Like eating to excess was not a part of our culture at one point. People were way more restrained in how they ate food and stuff like that. Like, and and a lot of the food, even meat, was not a big part of culture because it's a food that many people had access to. A
Mm-hmm.
lot. All of this stuff has been changed in a short period of time to make, and what's been left behind is fruit. Fruit was a much bigger part of people's diets, like prior to, I don't know, 100, years ago. Like there were orchards all over the place. Like people
Mm-hmm.
grew fruit all like we forget all this stuff. It's like people act like that's not like in where I live in any major city, there were orchards. Like there are streets, there are areas that were called like the even the historic names. Every church and stuff had an orchard. Like it is all of that.
Right. And you live in the northern hemisphere in a pretty cold region, right?
Yeah, and even then, like because before there was transportation, right? Before there was like good transportation, every place grew its own fruit. Like that's just how it was. You couldn't get fruit imported, or you couldn't just get it because it'd be coming on a horse and cart. Like it would take, it would take months or weeks or something to get to you or whatever. So it was a lot of it was grown as locally as could be, whatever. So yeah, I mean, yeah. So And that's a big thing for me is like culture has been shifted and people don't realize that and they think this is a part of my culture or this is my background. No, it's not. Like even
Right.
it's not really. It's what food manufacturers have kind of changed it to be through advertising messages and stuff. That's my rant.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And that's the beauty of fruit is that it grows everywhere. There's like a fruit for every climate. You know, even in the UK where it snows how many months out of the year, you still have tons of berries. You can grow apples and pears. Like
Well,
the
yeah,
more I learn about this lifestyle, the more it makes total sense that this is what we were designed to eat no matter where you are in the world.
yeah. Admittedly, there's definitely areas that didn't have a lot of fruit and all that stuff. But I mean, I think I even heard a thing about the Eskimos picking berries, and they would pick berries and stuff in the warmer months, and they would literally put them at a high altitude and freeze. So they had like frozen fruit like throughout like, but who tells that story about the Eskimos? It's always about like seal blubber and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
nobody's telling the other side of it. And
Right.
that human cultures have had fruit preserving practices, drying fruits, uh, pickling fruits, all these different jams, preserves, all these ways of having fruit longer in the year. Um, and yeah, what another thing that's forgotten is in the northern hemisphere places um, that they developed varieties that grew early, that grew late, that had a long ripening period to extend the availability of fruit through the year. So if you had, sorry, I'm getting into this rant, but like if you could have apples that don't really ripen until maybe October, November, even. They could stay on the tree that long. When they come off, they might take a few months to ripen. So you can still have apples into December, January, perhaps. All that people don't think about that. They just think, no, we couldn't eat any fruit in the past because we couldn't import it. It's like that's not the true history.
Right. No,
Well,
you're totally right. Nature is beautiful and it gives us this ability to grow fruit, you know, all 12 months of the year, especially in a tropical climate. It's harder in when it's snowing, but you're totally right. Even amongst one species of fruit like apple, there are
yeah,
so many varieties that you can grow, like to
and
stretch out that season as much as
yeah,
possible.
and the Cavendish banana was first grown in England. Like it was grown
Mm.
in a greenhouse. Like that's like people had that's the other thing. Like people had greenhouses, or there's a thing called an orangery. Like big houses have these rooms with glass. That's what people would grow oranges. Like it's all been sort of forgotten, man. And yet people think about hunting and all this hunter gatherer, all this whatever.
Hmm.
But
No, you're totally right. There's two more things
yeah,
I want to say in that. Like, well, that's a lot of things I want to say. There's an idea floating around that I don't necessarily agree with, which is that we've hybridized fruits so much that they're only now being fully fleshed, you know, fully fleshed, smaller seeds, really sweet. People are trying to argue that that never was the case. That bananas used to have these huge seeds in them and like very tiny flesh. That avocados was like mostly pit and like a tiny, tiny bit of flesh. Now, yes, fruit has changed over the years, but how do you know that? How do you know what fruit looked like 300 years ago? Nobody really knows. And in fact, I found this book recently. Um, I want to see. Maybe I want to just grab it and show you, but it shows like the best varieties of fruits that were grown in England like 200 years ago in the 1850s or the early 1800s, and they looked amazing, and it looked way more um,
yeah,
abundant and varied than it does today. Like we eat like a handful of varieties of apples today, and they had all these varieties, which, like you said, grew at different times of the year
yeah.
that offered different types of flavors and different types of nutritional profiles. And I don't believe the idea that we had to hybridize fruit and that it's unnatural. Like I think fruit's always been abundant and always been man's ideal source of food.
So the way that I look at that question is that um, I mean hybrid doesn't isn't even that much of a problem. That's what happens in nature. It's just taking a natural process and
Hmm.
And it's what would have happened, like if humans came into a forest or whatever area, started eating the fruits, start to live in that area, hybridization would have happened because we would have went to the trees that had the sweetest fruit, and those would have been the fruits we would have ate. Those would have been the seeds that would have proliferated. Those would have been the genetics that would have mixed and merged and would have created better and better. I mean, that's to me, that's how it happens. But um, people are right in a sense of like there's been a conscious process of farmers wanting to make better fruit that lasts longer, that tastes better, that has less seed in it, or smaller seed. But that's to me, that's more of trying to match what tropical fruits are like. Because we went to north and more south, and the fruits were naturally maybe smaller, less sweet in general, or some of them were. That's the other thing. Like every tree is different. Like every tree. So when people say
Hmm.
bananas were all naturally seeded, it's like every tree is different. So you're they've got this modern idea like all bananas are one thing. No, that's because we all eat one variety of bananas. Like that's why we think bananas are all one thing. Like in reality, there's limitless amounts of bananas. But um, yeah, things like apples. If you grow an apple seed, it's usually not an edible apple that comes out. Um, I heard a statistic that was like if you just plant apple seeds, like, and this is why I think if people want to grow fruit, I personally think they should buy like a variety or a tree that's already a good solid variety. But if you plant apple seeds, the likelihood that it's going to be a like a tasty apple that comes out or edible tasty apple is like I've heard like 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000. Like it's really small chance. And to get one of those supermarket type apples is like 1 in 1 million. Like it's a really small chance. So there are certain fruits that we've picked rare genetic varieties of and taken those because they were suitable for the climate and all that kind of stuff. But that's because of the fact that it's a, a northern climate and those tropical fruits just generally didn't happen there. So it was try to me it's like we were trying to ape, that's a funny word to use, but we were trying to mimic the tropical fruits that we were looking for, um, that were bigger, certainly had seeds in them and stuff, but had plenty of flesh, were bigger, were maybe sweeter and all that stuff. So yeah, I think fruits have changed. We've played a conscious role in changing it, but we've always played a conscious role in changing fruit. Like that's happened for millions of years when that it's a symbiotic process, right? So we spread the seeds, and the seeds that the fruits that we like the most are the ones that got spread. It was a,
Hmm.
you know, so and yeah, did farmers then go, this tree's good, this tree's good, let's try and match the pollen from that tree, put it on the flowers of that. Yeah, stuff like that happened, but that's not that unnatural a process. That's kind of like gonna happen at some point. What so hybridization, like I don't know, is it hybridization if you take your children and you put them in a particular school because you want them to marry people of a particular class or whatever, like you want them to meet a husband or a wife from that from that group of, people are doing this kind of stuff all the time, right? It's like,
Yeah, totally. Hybridization is not a bad thing. And similarly to the concern with apples, like you're going to want to graft a known variety onto a rootstock. Just similarly to mangoes and avocados is the same thing. If you plant an avocado pit, there's no guarantee it's going to be the same variety. In fact, it probably won't, and it likely to not taste that great.
yeah, this is an interesting thing for me, like the whole fruit growing, because I grow my parents' garden. I planted some apple trees there, and they're kind of appropriate varieties for the climate and all that kind of stuff, and they're quite interesting. But I personally, I go for I kind of go for flavor over variety in a sense. Like, so I went to like the Terra Frutis community. And I don't, you might have been there, but like they've got a big piece of land. They're growing a lot of fruit there. They got a lot of bananas. And they have a festival and stuff. And they planted a bunch of stuff and they've been there a long time. And I'm like, how come you guys still have to go out and buy fruit from outside here, you know? And it's because they've like went for this, you know, they've planted stuff that like takes 20 years to grow and stuff like that. Like a lot of durian trees or um I can't remember. There's certain fruits that just take ages to cherimoya, not cherimoya, chempedak. They take
Mm,
ages to grow, and so they're growing a bunch of that stuff. And it's like, well, that's great, but why didn't you specifically go to the locals or the people in this climate, this area, and say, what are the fruits that are fantastic for this region? Not like let's take Thailand trees and make it happen in Ecuador. We don't know, is that going to work? Like who knows if it's going to work? Let's do the most. For me, it would be I want the quickest trees that are going to develop with the best fruits for this area. And
hmm.
that would be kind of my idea. But um, and I like I think we are kind of a species that seeks variety. At the same time, I can just love one type of fruit for a long time, or just mostly one or two types. Um, so yeah, but I would like to get into that, but we've not even covered a lot of your story. Sorry, we're going all over the place. But with the fruit growing, it surprises me sometimes where people do stuff like, yeah, I'm growing this from seed, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'm like, just keep it easy. Like, why are you trying to like go and buy go to someone that sells fruit trees that knows what they're doing, that you can go and ask them like, this is what I want. I'm buying them for flavor, not because they look good. I want really good producing trees. Uh, I'm going to be eating them myself. Like I want them to be, you know. Um,
Hmm.
whereas, yeah, I think people make things that anyway. Sorry, going
No,
down.
no, you're right. There's so many resources now, especially online. So many food forest groups and homesteading groups online and forums that you can read about what people have success with. And I think especially lately in the last few years, there's been a movement toward self-sustainability, trying to grow our own food out of the cities. And I want to ask you, like you've been in the game a little longer than me, have you noticed any type of paradigm shift, any type of increase in awareness of this movement, or does it seem like the same amount of people kind of trickle in every year? I wonder, has the last few years in particular sparked an uptick in this lifestyle?
I'll tell you my thoughts on this. I believe there's way more people that have an interest in this than we have an awareness of. In terms of like because that say I've been promoting my festival for a number of years, so I've done advertising and different stuff, and it used to be that you would go on Facebook and if you did an advert, you could actually advertise to people that had an interest in fruitarianism. Like you could actually pick that as a category or raw food or raw vegan. So it would give you, and for my country, like the UK, which is about 60 million, 65 million people or something, uh, this is just for Facebook. It would, if you picked some of these topics, it would say like, it would generate an audience of like 85,000 people or something. I'd be like, that sounds like a huge, massive number of people to be interested in this. You know, it doesn't mean that they're a fruitarian. It means that at some point they've maybe liked something or commented on something or shown an awareness or they're part of a group or, at some point. So in terms of people that are open and aware of like raw food, because if you think about the Woodstock Festival, think about the people there. Like, there's so many people there that are just look like the average conventional person. They're not raw, they're not vegan. Many weren't vegetarian. Um, but they've got this interest and awareness of raw foodism. They've probably done a juice fast, maybe. They might have done a fast. They maybe have incorporated more raw foods into their diet. So there is this awareness out there of this. Definitely there's an awareness. What there isn't in my estimation, is um, something that brings people more together. So there's a lot of online information. If you look at some of the online people, they have 1 million followers, 100,000 followers. Like it's not unusual for some raw food people to have big accounts and get big views. And if you think about like say Miami Fruit, they've got some videos on TikTok or Instagram that have millions of views, right? And it's like here we are picking fruits, that's all the video really is. And there's a lot of videos of fruit that get loads of views. So there's definitely an awareness and interest. I think what's missing is places for people to connect in the real world. Um, and I say with like Woodstock, you see 400 people there. I honestly think if there was a more robust organization in some way that could get together, there could be way bigger events. I think there's way more people that are interested in this. Um, I think that I was thinking about this recently. The funny thing with the events that we have in the raw food scene, it's really like retreats and these festivals. And these festivals are like big retreats. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we taking the model of where a retreat, you've got a private location, you've got classes and activities, food's provided, like it provides a lot. And then you're trying to do that for at Woodstock. They tried their last year was this year was 250 people. Before it was 400 people or whatever. It's a very demanding thing, and they're kind of a small organized organization, and they kind of hit a point where they couldn't really grow it, or they weren't gonna it wasn't realistic or whatever. Um, so it might be the case that these kind of events are not sustainable or are kind of difficult to do. Raw food restaurants. It'd be interesting for me if someone created a raw food restaurant that wasn't the gourmet, right? So a
That's
lot,
my goal. I want to do that.
yeah. So a lot of raw food restaurant stuff is gourmet, right? Which is cool. But it would be interesting for me if someone created something that was like not anti-gourmet, but essentially wasn't gourmet, and maybe was just like what Woodstock has salad bar. Here's a salad bar. Here's three amazing dressings or whatever. Pick what you like, pay for it, and maybe you can have smoothies, you can have juice, you can have uh
Seasonal fruit bowls.
yeah, and you'd pay extra if you've got tropical fruits and stuff. Yes, so and you could have a just fruit if you like. So it would be curious for me because I think that there would be a demand for that. I think people even outside of because that's what my thing is like. There's more people that would have a raw food meal that would come to a Woodstock than are actually raw or actually vegan or whatever. Um, so I think the awareness is growing. I think there's something missing. I think we're missing a bit of leadership.
Mm.
I don't, if you think about it, like, do we have an iconic figure that's like the leader of this movement? It's like we have a number of different people that
Yeah.
occupy different roles, but I would say that we don't quite have someone who's like, hey guys, this is the direction we're going. This is what we're going to do. Like, let's do this. There's no one, it's like there's a lot of people kind of putting their toe in the water a little bit, playing around
Hmm.
with it. Um,
You know who I think that leader is?
who's that?
God. I think it's nature. You know,
This,
and then
this is a great answer, yeah.
right, and then all the humanoid leaders like your John Rose or your Fully Rockestina, whoever you want to look to for this type of information and inspiration, they're holding a mirror up to nature. That's all they're doing.
Yeah.
They're just being a mirror. They're saying, look, this is nature, and kind of ushering it toward us. And I think that's what I like to do in my work is nature is the teacher. If once we align with nature and trees and planting and sourcing our food locally and using our intuition to eat rather than our cultural programming, then that's going to be the quickest way to get there, because there's a lot of raw food teachers who still tell you to sprinkle nutritional yeast and salt on things. And to me, that's not raw. Like, but I also hear what you're saying about like the meetups. I think I'm seeing more meetups now. You're seeing more fruit festivals sparking up. You're very instrumental in that movement. That's amazing. And there's the whole worldwide raw food meetup now, where people can kind of create their own satellite locations for these meetups. And it seems like social media is doing a good thing
Yeah.
for this awareness. But the last thing I kind of want to say on why maybe anyone could be interested in this lifestyle or this information is that we all love fruit. Even people who say they don't, I'm like,
Right.
well, you probably like tomato sauce. You probably like avocados, right? You probably enjoy orange juice, right? And then they're like, oh yeah, I guess I do like some
And
fruits.
so you said a great thing, which is like the leader of the movement is God, right? And this is so I'm fascinated by like human cults and human societies and human groups and how people act and all that. And I've thought about it in relation to fruit because some people say that raw food movement's a cult, and I'm like, I wish it was a cult. That's what I like. I like show me the cult. I'll go to it.
Yeah.
Like we're all like we'll go and live at the cult, but there isn't a cult. This is the thing. So you tell me there's a place we can go. We're all hanging out and there's all fruit there. We're all growing fruit and we're all there. And there's like, yeah, but it's not there. And it's also like the, it makes me think about this stuff because it's fascinating to me. I think about what happens when you're on a fruit diet is, or I've thought about this, like you no longer worship food in a certain way. I think people actually worship food. I think there's a cult around food that is a big part of our modern life where food demands people's attention. Like it demands people's time. It demands of their physical body. Like it basically says, if you want to eat me, it'll destroy your health. It'll take 20, 30 years off your life, and that's the deal. It's like a deal with the devil, right? It's like
Right.
a deal.
But the stimulation we get from it is so appealing and
Yeah.
so stimulating that we're hooked.
That's it, like the stimulation, but at the same time, it's like stimulation without satisfaction. It's like stimulation and no fulfillment. And this is a reflection of the entire modern predicament that a lot of people are in the comfortable parts of the world. The world is stimulating, their life is stimulating but non-fulfilling. And to me, that's like so there's something missing, and everyone's talking about there's something missing. And so people fill it up with God, people fill it up with cults of personality, like personality leaders they follow. When you're on the fruit diet, it's like fruit becomes, and I wouldn't say the cult object, the thing of worship. But think about that. We go to a fruit festival, right? We've been to it's a fruit festival, right? And yet there's a kind of a durian party part, and that's a little bit like we're worshiping, but even then, not really. Like it's impossible for people to worship fruit. Like it doesn't demand of you. It's so unstimulating in that sense. It's just purely fulfilling. Like it's just fulfilling without as much stimulation. And
Hmm.
there's something amazing about that. It's like when you're a fruitarian kind of a person, that that is such I don't know, I've not fully got my thoughts together on this, but I do think that it becomes this thing of like that missing thing that some people say God is like, well, if I go towards fruit, things will be pretty good. Like
Hmm.
like some people
Yeah.
they're trying to go towards God, they're trying to go towards this, trying to go, well, if fruit is kind of a focus for me, a lot of things go better in my life. Like
Hmm.
even like, okay, I eat fruit, I feel good, but I go to a fruit festival, I have a great time. I go to a fruit market, it's a fun experience. It's like fruit is like this nice. I buy a fruit book, like it's all good stuff. And
Totally.
yeah, I've not got all my thoughts together on that, but I'm going somewhere with that thought.
Well, I agree with you that I mean, the last thing you just said was you said the word good. Like fruits are good. It's
Yeah,
everybody knows fruits are good for you. They taste good. And to me, I mean, God is only one letter away from good. It's practically the same word. So when I say God, I don't mean the version that Catholics may think. I don't mean an old man in the sky. I don't necessarily mean any dogmatic approach to this. What I mean is like nature and goodness. And when you think what the manifestation of nature and goodness is, it's well, humans and animals and plants. And God in the Bible says, gave us every fruit bearing seed, and this shall be your meat. And like we don't even need to go into the Bible. We don't even need to go into anyone's modern conception of God. I think it's yeah, like what you're just saying. We're just aligning with what's good and pure
yes.
and natural. And what better manifestation than than delicious, aromatic, beautiful, fulfilling, hydrating, nourishing fruits that just drip from the trees.
Yeah, I believe that the way our psychology works, from what I understand, is we need a name. We need something that we're going towards, like an aim. And there's so many things that we can put in place as the aim of the thing that we look towards. We naturally kind of form like kind of groups and communities and hierarchies and all that kind of stuff. And there's usually something at the top of that that is like, this is the idea. This is the, in a religion, God is that thing at the top. Um, country, like businesses have their mission statement, like this is our guiding principle, our guiding philosophy,
Mm.
all that. Governments have their kind of like ideas or ideals, and even countries like America has the American dream and different things that people that are like everyone is going towards. But there's something fascinating to me about the idea that if your aim is, I need to eat some fruit today, if that, because that's really what our brain is like actually kind of designed to aim towards, right? That's actually, we'd have woken up in the morning hundreds of thousands of years ago and been like, need to go and find some fruit. Like that's really what we're trying to go towards. Like that's what we're trying to find. And and that's an ultimately fulfilling thing for us that leads to a greater sense of a real fulfillment, a real satisfaction. And I've had that real fulfillment feeling when you really a really satisfying meal of fruit. It's like nothing tops that. Nothing really for me personally. Like, and if all these drugs people do, all this stuff, it's like it gives them a high. I've not done a lot of drugs, but like it gives them a high, but it's ultimately empty. Like it's ultimately like doesn't really give them a long-term fulfillment. And and I think there's something like I would like to be religious. I like kind of want to be religious in a way. Like I think churches are beautiful. I've been to churches. I sometimes go. I kind of would like to be more like along with all the people there in some way. But there's something in me that makes me think that this fruit thing is making me think, what some of these people are missing is something even simpler than they realize. It's like a diet that makes them feel more fulfilled. And
Hmm.
when you realize that your diet can help balance out a lot of your emotional stuff and all that, um, that's it's hard to invest in a lot of the other things in life. It's hard to like really get interested. I don't know. I maybe I'll get religious more at some point, but I think there's something about fruit at one point. I wouldn't say it was our religion, but I think it was an overall guiding cultural phenomenon for us. It was the thing that for millions of years would have been the overwhelming thing that would have been our focus, our aim, and that it's just been displaced by stuff that doesn't replace it. Really.
I totally agree. And let me interject here. It's like when you're walking down the aisle in the grocery store, looking at the bright boxes of breakfast cereal. I mean, here in America, we have way more polluted and toxic cereals than you guys do with food colorings and all sorts of weird preservatives and refined sugars. But the feeling you get when you see the box that you want, you reach up and you grab it and you put it in your basket, that is the proxy for walking through an orchard
Yeah,
and
yeah.
selecting an apple or selecting an orange or a mango off the tree. It's the same exact thing. The aisle, right? The height of it, the reaching, your basket, like you're walking. This grocery store is not that big, it's as big as an orchard might be, maybe a little smaller, but
Well, yeah. That's another. I love this conversation. There's so many of these things that I've been thinking about as well, where I say this to people, like when people say to me, I've got a bad memory. People say that, like, oh, I've got a bad memory, can't remember names, got a bad memory. And some people, as they get older, they get worried about it. Like, I think I'm losing my memory. And I'll say to them, do you remember the first house you lived in? They're like, yeah. I said, if we went back there, could you take me around the house and you know exactly where all the rooms are and everything is? Yeah. Could you take me out the door, take me to the local supermarket? Yeah. Could you walk me around it? Yeah. Could you find the fruit department and all that? Yeah. Could you take me to your local school? could you do this? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, could you do that from multiple locations throughout your entire life? Yeah. I'm like, that's what your memory is designed for.
Mm.
It's not designed for remembering a list of people's. We would have lived in such small groups that we would have known everyone's name from birth or from a young age. Like we wouldn't have been exposed to so many people that we would forget names. But like that is what we don't realize how phenomenal our memory is because it's so normal for us to be like, if we went back to Woodstock and we were only there for a week, we would know where the kitchen was, where the toilets were, where the shower was, do you know what I mean? We can picture it. We can picture the areas we went to. Where's the dance party? Where's the banger hanger place where orgies happen or whatever? Like whatever it was. Like that's what our memory is for. Is our memory is like constantly memorizing geographical environments so that we can and also through time, which is why we're so seasonal and all that, why we have a consciousness of the time so that we know, okay, in a year's time, I'm going back to that place because that's where the fruit is at this time of year. Like that's entirely what our psychology is. That to me, it's not hunting. Hunting is I get up, I smell around, and I just chase something. And it's like doesn't matter what environment you are. The fruit eaters, the orangutans, the other monkeys, like they're storing geographical maps of their environment and also storing the memory of the time, the location the time they should go to get the best fruits. And it's like it's phenomenal. Like, and no one thinks that's amazing because they're comparing themselves against animals that hunt or animals that, and as you're saying, like none of us want a fruit market that moves around. Like do you know what I mean? We don't want someone that has a stall in their different place. We don't want to have to like smell and seek them out. Like it's in the same place. Like we want it to be the same place. We can find that place. We can visualize it, you know. And so I've got so many locations in my head of places I can go and buy fruit or food or whatever. Like, and I don't think that's the same for other animals. I don't think that's the same for different species, but that's what fruit eaters do. And it's not leaf eaters. Like leaf eaters are like leaves are everywhere.
Hmm.
Fruit eaters are like, you need to remember the maps of where the fruit is. I don't know
Yeah, I
that.
think a lot of this knowledge is sort of it is been ingrained in us, and it shows up in other parts of our lives. You know, I'm working on a second edition of my book of the Fruit Companion, and
Yeah,
I want to include a piece on in there about how even the most overprocessed foods like candy always tries to imitate a fruit that did come beforehand.
yeah,
So how interesting is it that we eat, candy corns in the fall, which is the same season that dates are ready,
right.
and they have that similar caramel flavor, the chewy consistency, the sugar content. They're the candy corn is a bastardization of dates,
Yeah,
and like there's so many examples you can find of that,
totally.
where the supermarket is a bastardization of an orchard, and fruit always is the primary um, format, the primary like shape that we're all trying to mimic. It's the perfect food that we were given, and I can't believe I came into this knowledge a few years ago. I
I
was
know, I know.
35, you know?
And this is the thing that frustrates me but excites me is like it's we're we're totally on the smallest tip of the iceberg as to what fruit can be because the demand for fruit, the excitement for fruit in the general population is kind of low, but people still buy fruit and stuff. But I mean everyone buys a little bit of fruit, so there's a lot of fruit out there, but like there's not really that's it's one of the problems with fruit as well. As I said, all those big advertisers, they were advertising, you know, all these different products, but there's no competition like advertising fruit because for a number of reasons. Because fruit is a natural product that no one owns. Like, so I can't own apples. Like, you can't do that. You could potentially own a geographic region, maybe, or whatever. Like, that's maybe what banana republics and stuff. But that's part of the problem. There's not any marketing or advertising for fruit, really. And um, so if someone discovers an amazing fruit, how do we get it out there? Like, how do we get it out to the masses? Like, how does it get into the supermarkets? How does it become established part of people's diets enough that they can keep on growing it? So we've got this fairly limited, in terms of what it could be, a fairly limited amount of fruits that are available. And as you're saying, for me, I used to grow up, we would eat jam sandwiches, which is like just bread and jam. I think you call it maybe jelly in the US, like fruit preserve. Um, Jam sandwiches. And to me, that's what figs are. When I have really good figs, I'm like, that's just a jam sandwich. As you say, dates are like caramel. When I first had the date, I was like, how come no one's ever told me about this? Literally, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm 25 years old. I've never had a date. It looks disgusting on the outside. Like it looks like a wrinkly brown thing. So I can understand why people would, but no one ever said to me dates. I never saw anyone from my background. So, dates are like caramel. Um, people talk about jackfruit being like the juicy fruit gum and all that stuff. And there's plenty of fruits that are that acid, that really sour, sweet flavor.
Yes. I was just about to say,
So many
are
candies.
you familiar with gummy worms? They have
Yeah,
those,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
so sweet tamarind. I had this realization the other day. I'm eating a sweet tamarind. I crack it out of the shell. It's a long, skinny,
yeah.
sweet, and acidic, bright tasting worm shaped piece of fruit. I'm like, this is the original gummy worms. Like, what the heck, man?
Yeah, there's so many of those things, but there's many more. And I would say durian is maybe custard. You know, I had custard growing up. Durian is quite a custard flavor, but can also be like an vanilla ice cream flavor. So if I've not written down the list, but certainly there's a list that you could come up with. And the thing for me is it's way more vast. Like the fruits out there that haven't been developed, that haven't become something that the public isn't really aware of. And an interesting one, actually, one of the ways that everything gets marketed, every new food, well, a lot of new food products, Coca-Cola was marketed as a health drink, right? I think even cigarettes were initially marketed as like this is good for your lungs and your breathing and stuff. Like this is how a lot of products get marketed. It's like initially it's like they going for a health slant. Um, and and I was thinking about soursop. Now, there's quite a few people that talk about soursop as anti-cancer. Truth is, like
Mm-hmm.
every fruit's anti-cancer, right? Um, but that maybe that could be something that people could pick up on. Like something like that could happen where that kind of information can go viral, and that maybe more people would want to try that. And it's a great fruit. But I think, unfortunately, because people have been denied fruit from such a young age, and I really mean denied, like parents deny fruit their children from having fruit. Like children want fruit, parents deny them from eating it. That's what happens. That's what I see. And so when people get grown up, they're like, I don't like fruit. It's like you've just been trained not to like fruit. You don't even know. You don't
Right. And you probably haven't had fully ripe fruit either.
not yeah, you've not had good stuff. You've not had the variety to know what you like. You don't even realize what it can be like. And the interesting thing with children is children don't have like really young kids, they don't need fruit to be super high quality. They'll eat stuff that's like that I'm like, this isn't that great. Kids are eating it. I'm like, oh wow, they're happy to eat that.
Mm.
Whatever, something that to me was like, that's not quite as sweet as it could be. They're loving it. Like, oh wow, like they've got a better taste for than I do. Um, but yeah, I mean, when I was so I connected with the Terra Frutis group and I went over there and I stayed in touch with them a bit, but they told me about a fruit called Iniaku. In Iniaku, they said it's like they said when this fruit is ripe and when it's in the markets, like people go crazy for it. Like people are buying all of them. If people find a tree that's right, they won't tell people, they're hiding them. Like people like binge on this stuff because it's so good. And I said, "What's the flavor like?" They're like, "It's like smoked cheese, bacon." Like literally called it like bacon fruit, like bacon smoked cheese kind of a thing. Like it's a fatty fruit. I was like, "Wow, I've never heard of it." And I've been on like fruitarian style diet for like 8 or 9 years at that point, whatever it was. Never heard of it. Never heard anyone talk about it. If I asked most people about it, they've never heard of it. I'm like, imagine fruits like that were commonplace all over the place.
Yeah.
It could be,
Hmm.
and that'll be the future. But even the best mangoes are not the ones in the shops. The best banana is not in the shops. So even of the common fruits, the best ones are not the ones that we have. We can't even get good figs here, and figs are like essential for a primate diet. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so,
Yeah, and there's such a need to source from places other than the grocery stores. Like I think there's a movement toward that. I see more and more questions every day in either the raw groups online or even like our WhatsApp groups with the festivals. People are saying, where can I order quality seasonal fruit boxes? And so I see that that market is totally ripe, pun intended, for someone to step up. And so I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to build a little network here in Miami to have a seasonal schedule of like what fruits will be available when, relationships with local organic farms, so that I can literally go one morning, pick all the fruit for the orders and send them out the same day, and then you get it 2 or 3 days later, if you're in the States. um, but I think I see more and more places doing that. I see more
yeah,
advertisements for places in California, the UK, and other just fruit suppliers, that people are starting to look outside the grocery store. We're becoming less satisfied with the quality there. And people are starting to wake up to, yeah, you're going to have to grow this on your own too, if you
those,
really want
yeah.
to control the quality of it.
So what I've seen is there's definitely scope for those businesses to be successful, as you talk about Miami fruit. But there's many Miami fruits. Like I think there are many fruit companies that deliver online and stuff. Probably in the US, there's probably a number. A number of them might be the farmers themselves. But the one in the UK is called My Exotic Fruit. They're kind of one of the big ones in the UK that bring in fruits from all over the world and send them all over the UK. And they come to the UK Fruitfest and they do amazing presentations. And they're not really fruitarian people, like they're not really raw vegan people. Um, I'd question whether Miami fruit are either, but they're kind of more so. I would say they're more culturally aware of the fruitarian thing. But um, the My Exotic Fruit guys, they've been saying, what is it that your community wants? What is it that the people into your diet want? And I said, well, the thing is, personally, what I think I mean, there's not so many people that are totally strict fruitarians or raw vegans, but I was like, what we would probably want is not that you have a fruit box of here's 20 different things. Here's like one type of a citrus, one type of a mango, one type of a thing, all in a box. We'd probably want what's the best of those things and a whole box of that. And then the next month, different or the same if that's the thing that's the best for that month again, then I think that most of us rather mono meals. Like we're
Well,
into
that would actually reflect nature. If you have trees around you, then one day this mango tree is gonna drop 45 mangoes, and that's what you're eating. And then a couple of weeks later, the seasons shift. Oh, this banana rack is ready. We're gonna go to town on bananas. So I agree that that's probably more what people in this lifestyle, this community want,
yeah.
is fewer variety, or rather the same variety, but over the course of the whole year.
I wonder if like an idea would be even just to be the middleman in terms of building a platform in a sense that I don't know. I think all these things are big projects and difficult things, but like if farmers out there could go, I think that there is this issue of like there's farmers out there that have a lot of food that they waste, throw away, all that kind of stuff. And with the fruit side of things, um, there's a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot of fruits that they can't really sell to supermarkets. Stuff is just not the right shape, size, and all the rest of it. Um,
Yep.
So
And
maybe,
farmers are notoriously bad at marketing. Just by nature of their job, they're working so hard in the field and making their product that
yeah, yeah.
when it comes time to market and building online stores, it's like they don't even have time for that. So you're right, it might be a great idea to
But that's
get a platform together.
that's the idea. That's the thing as well. Like you, maybe you could just be the marketer or just be like the so maybe they would send them out for you. Maybe you don't need to go and pick. Maybe they would do all that if you just provide the customers. I don't know, but it's there is definitely well, for a start, those businesses are definitely working. And I know that you talked about. I know you've said this about like trying to do it much cheaper than some of these because they do charge quite high prices at times compared to supermarket prices and all that stuff. But I don't know. Maybe that's what what they have to do. I don't really know how all that works, but there's definitely some exciting opportunities there for people to do something with that. Um, you know, the my exotic fruit thing, they are I've not really ordered from them much, and maybe that's bad, but if I go onto their site, I think it's like yeah, I I don't know. I would I think if they had a box of something, maybe I should probably order more stuff. I'm kidding.
Yeah, give them a try. But then again, I mean, they're in their business, in their name, it's exotic fruit, which, okay, if you live in the UK, any fruit might be exotic because you don't get to see them that often. But are they trying to market to people with more money, people who want something that they've never seen before? Or are they trying to just supply fresh local fruit, well,
Yeah,
freshly grown fruit to the UK?
I think it would make a difference. The thing is, it's like um, there's a small amount of people that probably are they are mostly or getting probably maybe it's restaurants ordering this stuff, maybe it's people for parties, um, hotels, maybe I don't know, different cultures because it's part of different these fruits are part of different cultures. So they're a one-stop shop for all sorts of people. So I can't really make a demand on them and say, hey, why don't you do something for like people who are like fruitarian, you know? But they have boxes here that are £45, 50. They have pretty decent boxes actually. Uh, I should probably investigate that. But yeah, there's definitely it's definitely a good idea to be had there. We've totally diversified away from your whole story, and let's get back to like so from that point of view, changing how did you actually find out about even juicing, raw foodism, veganism? Like what was that journey? Because we've not talked about that.
Yeah, I think the year 2020, which is when we had the big, worldwide health scare, that made me really scratch my head and take a much closer look at what's going on and what health is and how it's created and how its opposite
Mhm.
is created. So I've always been interested in learning about conspiracy. I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist because I don't need to theorize too much. I study history and I more of a conspiracy realist, if anything, because in 2001, when 9/11 happened, I was 14, I was in high school, and I started looking at the news a little more carefully. I started listening to about the news about the wars that ensued after, and it just seemed um, very much like there wasn't a lot of transparency and truth going on because we learned pretty quickly that they lied about pretty much everything when it came to 9/11. So that's just a way of saying, I have my ear tuned to how are we being lied to? Like what's the psyop here if there is one? And so I guess when 2020 happened, um, yeah, I just started researching more and more and saying, okay, what is health? What is disease? Terrain model came across my radar. I started learning about um, the work of like Don Lester, David Parker, and Tom Cowan and Andy Kaufman, and talking about, okay, germs and what is their role? Is And then I was basically exposed to the idea that is it germs that cause disease, or are germs the result of it? And it was that just fundamental shift in my mind of, wait a minute, just because there are germs at the site of an infection, does that mean it was the cause? And the answer is no. And then, so I basically went into studying virology and asking, okay, where are these isolated viruses? Where are the studies that show that this causes this? And so it was a huge wake up call. Tracking right along with that was people showing how you can minimize infection and minimize disease in your life, which is by cleaning up the diet. Very basic, natural, fundamental principles of life. Don't put in things in your body that are toxic, that are going to create harsh acidic byproducts for you to have to mobilize more energy to break down and take out of the body. The more we drink alcohol, the more we take stimulants, the more our nervous system gets drained of its energy, which means that our detox channels are backed up, and we can't we don't have enough energy to fully cleanse. And that's when the juice stuff came across the radar, and then raw veganism. And at first I was like, these people are crazy. Like, what, eat fruit? Like, what? Don't you need protein? Don't you need these types of fatty acids? And, because I had been looking into, like I said, I've been looking into nutrition and health and food, and it's always been on my radar. I've always been sort of into nutrition and trying to feed myself the best stuff ever. So yeah, I guess 2020 was like the turning point, where a lot of these things came across my radar. I read Arnold Ehret's book, The Meatless Diet Healing System. I read Douglas Graham's book, 80-10-10. I read the China Study. And all those things were just like, life was happening so fast and everything was unfolding so much. And I was like having this almost a crisis of like, wow, I knew there was some pretty heavy conspiracy out there, but we're being lied to about what we're eating every single day. And like, we're being lied to about the fundamental nature of disease. So it was a big unlearning process that at the same time I started incorporating the raw foods, and therein lied the learning process, actually the experience of having gone through this, watching different disease symptoms disappear, watching my body heal itself. Because like you alluded to, people love to point to a specific fruit like soursop, for example, and say, oh, this is a cancer killer. Or, and people ask me about my book. They say, oh, do you talk about the different properties, the healing properties of each fruit? And I say, no, I don't, because it's a holistic lifestyle that really brings about a condition to heal, right? So in my opinion, the body heals, and fruit only supports the body. Fruit gives us the hydration, it gives us the simple carbs, it gives us the amino acids, it gives us the biophotons, it gives us trace minerals and other macronutrients for the body to do its thing. So now if you stop eating eggs and steak for breakfast and only eat soursop instead, then yeah, you're going to see like a reversal in some potential harsh symptoms. But you don't need to eat soursop to do that. You can do the same thing with oranges. You can do the same thing with apples. Very basic, common, commercially produced fruits. So that's why, now I don't really need to go into even the vitamin content of each fruit. It's like, okay, well, if I want more vitamin C, I can go for certain fruits, but why do I just want the vitamin C? Don't we want a full spectrum of the variety of foods? Don't we want to eat the rainbow? And going back to nature, how that is sort of like the guiding principle. Nature gives us variety. Nature gives us green foods, pink foods, red foods, yellow foods, blue foods. And it seems to me like that spectrum, that variety is where the answer is where the healing can be supported, is like a variety of all these things. And the seasons are another testament to why that is the most natural course of action. Right now, watermelon's in season. Oh my God, I'm having a lot of watermelon, but I don't eat that stuff in the wintertime. I didn't have any watermelon at Woodstock Fruit Festival because that was this last year. It was in January or February. Yeah, in the dead of winter. And they had watermelon every day. Didn't touch it one time. Because why? They had sapodilla. They had egg fruit. They had chocolate star fruit. They had, other fruits that you can get year round, like some different varieties of bananas. And that's really what I was more interested in. Like the seasons, the seasonality, and the diversity. And yeah, I guess that was a sort of a
You
long answer to that question.
no, no, it was great, but you brought up two things that I think are so fundamental, which is you brought up three things, but to me, this is about embracing a totally new philosophy, like a different wisdom. And a lot of people don't get that, so they don't ever quite get this. Even people that come to the festivals, listen to the information, what you've outlined is stuff that they don't get yet, which is that as people have this mistaken idea, like as you're saying, what properties of this fruit leads to this thing? What is in this? Because it's and also the whole thing of nutrition being breaking things down into I need fats, protein, carbohydrates, something for my minerals, something for like breaking it all down like that. Like what nutrition's in this, that is for some reason a real tendency of the human mind to want to break everything down to its component parts.
Hmm.
And then, as you're saying, the properties of like what does this heal? What is that like? These are the ideas that people the average person has. This is how they've been trained to think about diet, about nutrition, how they've been trained to look at it. And
Right.
it's that's where you need to me to really embrace this kind of lifestyle. You need to throw that out. Like you need to throw some of these ideas out in which I do have an awareness of nutrition and all that stuff. I can understand how that works, but at the same time, I understand what most people think about nutrition is not right. It's and the whole world of science, because of that tendency, is continuing to spend the time breaking everything down like that and
Right.
trying to find what is the thing in the fruit that makes the healthy thing happen. And it's like that's not what's going on here. Um,
Right. Well, and even if it was a tiny bit, I don't think we need to use our brain to figure it out. I think we need to use our gut and our intuition because let's say you had a lack of chlorophyll in your life. Let's say you just weren't getting enough of that delicious, bright green, magnesium rich, iron rich blood of the plant. Your body will probably eventually make you just crave greens at some point. And if we relied on our intuition to go, oh my God, all I noticed this winter, all I wanted was like yellow fruit. All I wanted was pineapple, egg fruit, mango, banana, anything that was yellow, star fruit. I couldn't get enough of it. Other foods just didn't really, I didn't care for anything red. I wanted yellow, man. And I'm like, well, what is this? And, yellow fruits are a little higher in beta carotene than others. Is that a subconscious way of me knowing that I have a beta carotene deficiency? I don't know. But I do think the body is smarter than the mind. And if we're trying to figure this out with our mind and going, well, I got to get my vitamin K and I got to get this, then we can probably trick ourselves. But if we rely on our basic intuition, our gut feeling and instinct, that's like a huge, hugely powerful tool that's going to serve us, I think, a little better than trying to think. Because modern science has informed the way we think, and it's taught us to fractionalize everything and cut it all up, and that we can choose this vitamin and that vitamin and take them separately, and it's as if we're getting a whole bundle. But no, if we just tap into the intuition, I'm pretty sure we'll be led to the right place.
yeah, yeah, true, true. And I'm cautious with that because I think there's many people that say to me, I my intuition is telling me to have chocolate or whatever. So I think there's like we're not in the right environment yet to fully access that to some degree, I think. But yeah, I mean, I tend to look at maybe a little simpler. I sort of think that our nutritional needs are met fairly easily. I think that when we take fruit out of the diet, our nutritional needs are a problem. Not so much a problem, I believe, when we start to eat a fruit-based diet. And I think that what happened in the world of science, the human mind looks towards lack when it comes to food.
Mm-hmm.
It's more looking at what am I missing? What am I missing? You
Right.
know, what nutrient can I get? It's like you've probably got all the nutrients you need. You've got too much fat in your diet. You got too much animal protein. You too much cholesterol. Like you've actually got too much nutrition. And a lot of people as well, they have a tendency to think toxins. And the way I look at it is like the stuff that really messes people up isn't toxic. It's just they're having too much of it. Like,
No, that's a huge point. People with allergies know that it's triggered by a protein, and that we have like
but,
this certain protein sensitivity. So maybe I could have toxins floating around causing allergies, but maybe I just have an abundant, like a backup of proteinaceous waste in my body that needs to come out. And when I cut out the eggs and incorporated the oranges, then the table started to turn, you know?
protein's an interesting one, and protein and fat because they're not toxic. Like these aren't toxic things. They are things that our body would go, okay, I can use this. I can take whatever form of protein it is, bring it in. I can use it. I can break it down. I can use it for calories. I can stay alive. Um, so it's not a toxin. It's not toxic, but too much of it, and it's a problem. And yeah, well, anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit about the wisdom side of it because you're a reader and a seeker and someone that naturally goes towards knowledge. And I'd kind of like to know what are some of your tips for people in terms of books if they're readers and want to research. You do research, you're a researcher. What are some of the
Mm-hmm.
resources that you think are good for this and for to kind of wake people up?
Totally. That's a great question. And it kind of depends on what the interested person, what their learning style is. Some people hate reading. And so I don't want to try and say that these books will inspire you if you really aren't a reader. If you take things in through YouTube, for example, I would say check out John Rose. I think he's one of the best guys to listen to about raw living food diet, especially the solid food vacations. That's one of his specialties. Highly recommend checking out John Rose. I mean, you could learn a ton from Ronnie's Love Fruit podcast. Like dude, you have a lot of episodes on there, and you interview everyone in this scene, it seems like. So I would say podcasts, YouTube, people have their favorite YouTubers. I prefer books.
Right, right.
But so I can zoom in on those. There's a few I'll highlight. One last thing I'll say about podcasts though. So, okay, I don't use Spotify. I don't pay for Spotify because apparently they don't pay musicians that great. I use Tidal. It's like Jay-Z's streaming service. Apparently they pay artists 3 times as much. It's the same price per month. That's where I listen to music. However, did you know you can use Spotify for free to listen to podcasts? That's right. You don't have to pay for it. You can just get the app and you can listen to all their podcasts for free. And there's so many. So I like to type in someone's name. Like if you were just to type in Ronnie Smith into Spotify, you would find not only your podcast, but you'd find the other shows that you've been a guest on. Mm. So if there's like a guest I want to hear more about or hear more from, I'll type in their name into Spotify. And then all these podcasts that I didn't know about pop up. And all of a sudden I'm exposed to new teachers, new speakers.
I like that.
Yeah. So even anyone's name, even if it's not in the raw food movement, if you want to hear David Goggins speak, type his name into Spotify for free and listen to any 2-hour episode with him talking to anyone.
Yeah.
So that's one good avenue.
Yeah. You search for the name and then it'll give you like podcasts and shows.
Right.
Click on shows that it's a good resource. And
yeah.
I don't know what Tidal has, but you can get audiobooks on Spotify. I'm on Spotify Premium, but it's interesting what you said about Tidal. I didn't really know that, but
it's tougher because not many people use Tidal, so a lot of people share playlists and share albums through Spotify. And for me, I don't lack anything using Tidal for music and Spotify for podcasts. And I think the artists are getting paid more. I don't actually know.
Let's talk about your book so that this gets a shout out for.
Well, for sure. Well, can I just mention like a few other books?
Yeah, go. Yeah, we haven't even started that yet.
Cool. So yeah, we could talk about my stuff, but there's so many amazing, influential books out there. So like I said, Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System was really inspirational to me. I think he writes it in such a compelling way, and his personal story really opened my mind about fasting and raw food eating and the innate ability for the body to heal. He
Yeah.
wrote this 100 years ago. It came out in 1923. So that's one. If you like the old stuff, I would recommend checking out Tilden, John Henry Tilden. This came out 1926, was his last book, I think. It was one of the last books he wrote, Toxemia Explained. Really mind-blowing book. It's a really short read. I read it in like 2 days one time, and really just elucidates the nature of dis-ease, the nature of toxemia, which is blood that contains toxin, that, and he tells you how to maximize your nervous system energy to be able to maximize detoxification. It's pretty amazing. So he doesn't even talk too much about food. It's more about how to just conserve your battery. You know, what things draw the battery, draw energy from the battery, things like fear and worry and guilt, shame, lying, but even overexertion in exercise, over sex, you know, over anything, really, overeating. Doesn't matter what you eat. If you're overeating, you're doing your body a disservice. So check out John Henry Tilden's Toxemia Explained. I love Dr. Norman Walker. He has a few small books, Colon Health, The Natural Way to Vibrant Health. I really like Dr. Norman Walker.
Yeah.
And then one maybe that's been the most influential to me is, it's not an actual printed book, I don't think, but you can find it online. It's called The Life Science Health System by T.C. Fry and the Life Science Health Institute. I think they compiled that in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And it's like 3,000 pages. It's one of the largest compendiums of natural hygiene. It's all the work of Dr. Shelton condensed into, you know, T.C. Fry's delivery of this natural hygiene. I don't want to say
Like
Bible.
that's like a super course. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I
And you,
yeah.
well, you can find it real quick on terrain.wiki. Somebody uploaded the whole thing. It's like a web browser version. So terrain.wiki, click on the Life Science Health System, and you can read any one of their 101 chapters.
I'll admit someone sent that to me one time, and so I've got the full PDF or whatever. I didn't pay for it, and I feel a little bit funny about things that I've not paid for, but I don't even know where you would buy that, to be honest. Like, if people want to buy that, I'm not even sure where it is available. It probably is
Right.
available somewhere. Um, but I've never heard any of the festivals, events I've been to, I've never seen anyone sell it or having access to it, whatever. Or never seen any of the people online really talk about it that much. But I like what you're saying here. Tilden, I've never read that one. Toxie Explain, I've not read that one. Arnold Ehret, I, you know, I think we talked about this already. Like, I read a bit of it and I just couldn't quite get into the style of the English. Like, I think I just didn't progress with it. Um, there's a guy called Sylvester Graham. I think he might have been prior to Tilden or maybe the same time. So these were like some of the early hygiene guys.
Yeah, Sylvester Graham was the guy who introduced graham crackers and graham bread. He was
Yeah,
like an early proponent of vegetarianism.
exactly. Yeah, he was a big name. Like, he did big lecture tours and stuff, I think, in the US. And that's the interesting thing. I love the whole history of the raw food movement thing. I find it fascinating. Like, how is this message getting out there to people? And then you kind of start to realize the message wasn't that crazy back in the day. It's now that it seems crazy because of how much the culture's changed.
Mm-hmm.
Then, like, people were growing their own food and stuff. It wasn't that mad for people to be like, you know, eat more fruit. Well, it wasn't. There was. You can see, like, Anne Osborne would find old newspaper clippings of stories about people eating a fruit diet, or a doctor recommended a fruit diet from the 1920s or way back. And the article is not, this is crazy. The article is just like, isn't this a cool idea? Sort of thing. It's not like there's not this resistance thing to it of like, there's a nutritionist says this is crazy or this is going to kill you. There's none of that.
Yeah,
None of
yeah.
that.
You find an article like that now, and it's probably talking about how pseudoscientific these ideas are and how you're at danger of dying from
They have,
starvation.
it's like they have to have a nutritionist at the end that says this diet could be deficient in this, even though
Yeah,
there's no evidence for what they say. There's no evidence ever for that kind of statement. But
but
yeah,
there's a lot of funding.
yeah. So it's interesting to me. There's like an American. hygiene movement. There's a European uh, thing. The Germans, they had these kind of sanatoriums or whatever. There was the guy that wrote the Essene Gospel of Peace. I can't
Hmm.
remember these guys' names. I've never really read a lot of these things.
Okay, so real quick, his name is Edmund Bordeaux Zakelli,
Right,
and
yeah.
I just found a stack of his old books
Oh wow.
at a thrift store here in Homestead, and
That's
I was
great.
like, I struck gold, man. It was like I opened the chest and the light came out of it. So he's all into biogenic and the Essenian movement. And I've been reading these, bro. These are amazing. If anyone wants to actually listen to me read a bunch of pages from one of these books, I did so yesterday and a couple days ago on my Instagram, Radical Health Zine. I was reading from the Cosmotherapy of the Essenes, and I just gave my analysis. And people got a lot out of it. People texted me afterwards and DM me and said, "Hey, I got so many downloads and so much inspiration from that talk." So I was like, "All right, cool." So yeah, Essene Gospel of Peace, and this guy's a Kelly. Really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, there's this book as well. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Gordon Kennedy. Let me try and find it. I wonder if you've read this book.
Now his name doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah, let me try. The guy's still alive. Children of the Sun. Have you ever heard of the book Children of the Sun?
No, it just reminds me of that Rage Against the Machine song. This is for the people of the sun.
Children of the Sun is this guy Gordon Kennedy wrote it. A friend of mine showed it to me, and what was amazing to me is the pictures in it were like tanned guys with long hair, barefoot, big watermelons, eating big, and it's like from 100 years ago. And I was like, this is so amazing. This is what I see at like Woodstock or something now, and it would be considered kind of radical and unusual now, but actually there were guys doing this way back, and it was a lot of it was like I think it was German people and certain people that got into natural lifestyle, natural hygiene. Nudism was a part of it, actually, like being nude was a part of it. Some of those guys went over to California. They started trying to live in, eating fruit, living naturally, kind of living in nature and stuff. And some people think that they were a bit of the genesis of the hippie movement, of like they impacted or influenced the whole hippie situation in the 60s and stuff. But these guys came before that, and some of them became slightly famous as well. Uh, but it's the book kind of like has all these pictures of uh like these early hygiene guys, and yeah, just guys that were like living these, going out picking figs and barefoot.
Yeah, and then well, I think we needed the industrial revolution of the last 100 years in order to spur us into action. And you and myself and other people in this movement are really trying to make this information mainstream. Like we have no vested interest to keep this information secret or hidden. Like we want all of our friends to stop suffering. We want everyone to come back together with nature. We want poverty and malnutrition to be eradicated. We know that more fruit trees can solve that issue. So yeah, like you and I are, I mean, this is what we're doing. We're trying to bring these books and this information back into the mainstream because it's not so far-fetched. Like the books 100 years ago were writing, it doesn't seem that extreme to go on all fruit or to just eat raw fruits and vegetables. In fact, the opposite is extreme when you really start to investigate it. But with this movement, we're going to get a lot of pushback because people don't want to be woken up. People don't want to stop eating the things that make them feel physically good, that they get pleasure out of. So it's an uphill battle, but I do think the universe is on our side, meaning we are moving back to nature, and that this is only an inevitability of our world. Is that we are starting to wake up and embrace this information, this practice once again. And so that's why I wrote the book. That's why I wrote Fruit Companion. Is I think this is sort of it just will help people along this journey. Any questions that people have about, well, how do I tell when it's ripe? I try to include that in here because that's one of the most important questions that comes up with a new, raw food eater.
Yeah, this is brilliant. And let me just show you this picture here. So I'll put it on the
Mm.
screen. I don't know if you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is
Yeah, they look tan and
give me a second.
strong.
Yeah, but that's when I first saw that, I was like, that just makes me think of fruit festivals like that. These are the kind of guys that I've met at fruit festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And it
with
looks like they're in front of a mango tree too. Like those leaves look very
yeah,
much like mangoes.
that might be in Florida, I'm not, or maybe California. I'm not sure. This guy here, I don't know if you can see what I'm pointing at.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a song called Nature Boy. So these guys were called Nature Boys. That was like the kind of the name. That was kind of the nickname of it. The kind of Nature Boy movement, not hippies. And I think his name was Ibn something, Ibn Paz, and he wrote a song called Nature Boy that became a hit single.
Mm.
Um, and Nature Boy is also, if you know wrestling, I don't know if you know, have any awareness of wrestling, but there is a guy, one of the most famous wrestlers called Ric Flair, and his nickname was the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, right? And it means, it doesn't make any sense to us now. Like, what does that mean, the Nature Boy? But he took his nickname from a previous wrestler called Buddy Rogers, I think, or it was some. I think it was maybe Buddy or something. But anyway, his nickname was Nature Boy. But he goes back to like this time when Nature Boy was actually something that people had this idea of, like a nature boy is like someone that is out getting tanned in California, you know, loves how they look or whatever, has long hair, long blonde hair and stuff. Like that was the idea of like a nature boy. And so it's just funny how it's kind of it impacted the culture in a few ways, in interesting ways. It got out there, but um, yeah, I mean we've talked for quite a while. I do want to recommend the book, The Fruit Companion. Where can people get it? Is that I think you should get the physical copy, like because it's good to have this. You can carry it around. It's really well written. Like it's
Thank you.
really well produced, super well produced.
Thank you. People can find it on my website, sethbailin.com or thefruitcompanion.com. We'll take you to the landing page there. You can find it on Amazon too if you prefer to shop through Amazon. I think you get it a little quicker, and you can leave a review. But yeah, sethbailin.com, thefruitcompanion.com, or Amazon. And if physical paper is not your thing, I do have a PDF version that you can download straight to your phone. The links are live, meaning you can click on one of the names in the table of contents and it'll shoot you to that page. So the PDF version is also available on my website. It's actually cheaper, but most people, from what I have been picking up, really like the physical paper.
Yeah,
It's small enough to fit in your pocket or your shoulder bag, and yeah, it's kind of designed for you to take with you to the store. So if you see some new fruits that you haven't seen before, oh, is that a guava? How do I tell when guavas are ripe? Boom, just
yeah.
find it in here, and they'll tell you.
It's really comprehensive. It's really cool, really good information. And
Thank you, Ronnie.
you've got a list of selected resources at the back. I'm just checking out. Yeah, you've got the books that we've discussed. A book that I've never, I'm interested in your thoughts on this one because I've never read it. Um, but I've heard people talk about it. Man's Higher Consciousness by Hilton.
Oh, it's one of the best, Ronnie. You got. I was gonna shout that one out when you asked me earlier. Man's Higher Consciousness by Hilton Hotema, aka George Clements, blew my mind. I read it before I went to my fast, my 21-day water fast. And then during that fast, I had the audiobook version. I listened to it again. And it's just so fascinating. He has a really in-depth study of longevity. So
Okay.
he chronicles the longest living people in the world. He talks about a guy in China who lived till he was 350 years old, like in the last few hundred years records. And he'll tell you where it was published, what year it was published. So if you don't believe that there was someone who lived till 160 in Ohio in 1942, you can literally look up the newspaper that he mentions and try to find that in the archives. So yeah, aside from him outlining like the longest living humans on Earth, he also talked about what they ate. And it just showed me, this book, that we don't need to eat that much. There's some people that eat once a week. There are some people that eat one meal a day and not that much. Our whole idea that we need this many calories is like what we were talking about earlier. It's fractionated. It's like cutting up nutrition and life into these tiny pieces and saying like, you need to make sure you get this, 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 and this. But what man's higher consciousness taught me is that we have something much more divine fueling us. That I think this is a book people read and get sparked on breatharianism, and people have a lot of ideas about that. I'm not ever trying to like stop eating food in my lifetime and just live off prana. Maybe it's possible, but it just I would definitely read that book. It's really inspiring, if only for the historical findings that he includes, like from published articles.
Yeah, so that's what I kind of thought about. That's kind of what I've picked up from it a little bit, is that maybe it's saying, you know, it's one of those books that is mentioned that kind of thing of like we can live on less food or live on a small bit, you know. And I've personally not experienced that yet. And the interesting thing for me is I can quite easily put on weight on a fruit diet, because the way my journey's been has been, when I first started off on this diet, I was very much influenced by Durian Ryder. I guess you know who that is,
Mm-hmm.
but he was a big name, and he was raw at the time when I started. He was a student of Doug Graham, and Doug Graham was another big name, and they're both. Well, I would say Durian Ryder specifically would promote a very high calorie diet. He'd be like, you need to get the calories in. You need to. So I've always erred on the side of probably eating more than I needed to, and that eventually led to me. At first, I lost weight on a raw food diet, but eventually, I did. I got to the point where I could eat enough, and so even on a fruit diet, I could be like carrying more weight than I needed to, and a lot of people don't believe that sometimes. But anyway, so I've been cutting down recently. I've been like, I I'm not fit enough to eat this amount of food and work it all off fitness wise. I'm not there yet, but maybe at some point. So I'm gonna cut back on what I'm eating, and just reducing calories, even in a fairly small amount, I could feel the difference so significantly, such an
Mm.
impact. And so for me, the thing of like you can eat less food or eat on less, like I've just not personally ever vibed with that or seen that ever been, never seen an example of that. And
Yeah, one example that got me was this guy named Yogi Prahlad in India. He
yeah,
claims his claim is that he did not eat for 70 years, and people didn't believe that. The Indian Defense Ministry brought him in for 2 rounds of tests. I think the first test they did, they just had him under under watch for 10 days, and the yogi sat there, didn't use the bathroom, didn't ingest anything. At the end of the 10 days, he said, can I go? You know, and
yeah,
let him go. And then they did it again for 15 days, and they noticed the same thing. He didn't pass urine, he didn't pass stool, he didn't speak of thirst, he didn't show any signs of needing anything. Actually, he just sat there for 15 days. So I do think, you know, and that's published by the Indian government. So there's a degree of believability to that. But did he eat for 70 years or not? I don't know. I'm not him. I wasn't there. And I think a lot of the breatharians can be charlatans, but there's something to be said about if you reach a state of being, I don't know whether it's in the mind, consciousness, or the body, that we can live off prana and light and air. But again, I don't know. You know,
yeah,
I find that I need food every day. I
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
too fatigued if I don't. You know.
So it's for me, it's on the balance of, I see myself as, to some degree, especially with my festival, a figure or a leader in the movement. In terms of at my festival, at least, I'm an authority figure to some degree. Um, so with the message that I'm putting out, especially at the festival, like and around the festival, where do I want the balance of, what's the balance of the impact of what will happen? If I say to people, Breatharianism is a possibility, what's that going to lead to? And for me, there's much more of a chance of um, people developing problems with eating because they think it's possible to eat less than they need to, or they can live without food. And I had I'll say friend that I lived with, that I spent time with, that was very much focused on the breatharian thing and very interested in it. And it was
Hmm.
a deep thing for them. It was like a emotional thing deep for them, that this was a desire they had. And it just made life challenging for me. And there's people that so I just think there's way higher a risk of people taking information and it becoming and eating disorder stuff is very prevalent and people can
Hmm.
die as a result of it. It's very serious. So I prefer cutting that off and just being like, we're not talking about that in terms of at the festival. I'm not going to let anyone give a lecture on that topic. And my personal thing is it's a miracle if it's possible. It's a total miracle. And like you said, I personally think it's a lot of charlatan kind of and delusional behavior. I think there's an awful lot of people that aren't trying to lie about this. They believe what they're doing.
Mm.
They believe when they're eating, they don't really need it. Like a lot of these guys eat food and they just are like, I don't really need to eat it though. And you're like, yeah, you do. Like that's why you're doing it. Like that's, so it creates a lot of delusion. And there was a great story where I interviewed this guy, Genesis Sunfire, who he called himself a breatharian. And there were people like David Wolf, the kind of famous raw food guy. Uh, he like was interviewing him and stuff. He put him out there a bit. And this guy, Genesis Sunfire, was speaking at different things and whatever. And he said to me, I turned up at a breatharian conference and the organizer said, listen, I'm sorry to say this, but all the other teachers are in the room and they've all got food. They're all eating. I didn't realize they ate.
Ah,
Right. And he said to me, I was the idiot that was trying to actually do this. Right. And I thought like, okay, and because he admits now he eats food and everything. Um, and it's kind of like to me, it's like levitation, the ability
right,
to walk through a wall, bilocation. Some of these things are talked about in spiritual um world. Like there's people that can levitate. There's people can do. It's like it's if it happens, it's unbelievably rare. Uh,
right.
and and I tend to think that if it happens, some of those people aren't going out there and talking about it that much. And I don't know.
Right. No, I think you're right, Ronnie, and I admire that you have a sense of responsibility to not lead people astray, because you're totally right that when people get in their head the idea of breatharian, they start dry fasting and they
Great.
just cut out all food and water, and that's terribly dangerous, especially when you're dealing with chronic dehydration, which most people are. So I don't want anyone to hear this and start just like dry fasting or think that they don't need food, because yeah, no, you're totally right, it's totally valid. I'd still recommend the book to just expose ourselves to
Sure.
these ideas and some of the history. It's
Yeah, I mean, I read Autobiography of a Yogi is a book that's sold probably millions of copies. Like it's a big, well-known book that has stories of a breatharian in it.
mhm.
Um, but there's so much craziness around breatharian and stuff. Like the guy Wiley Brooks. Did you look into Wiley Brooks?
No, but was Genesis Sunfire, he's got the tattoos on his face?
Uh, Tattoos all over.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I haven't heard the other guy. No.
Wiley Brooks I think I don't know if this guy's still alive, but breatharianism.com or whatever is his website. And this is a guy who in the 70s was interviewed, I think, on TV and stuff as a breatharian and had a movement and had people around him and kind of a cult of personality and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And then like his followers started to catch him going to McDonald's and things like that. But then the guy, if you go to his website, and I don't know if he maintains it or it's just up there. It was when I last looked. Um, the website, the front page is like Wiley Brooks is the reincarnation of Jesus Christ, the Prophet Muhammad, Buddha, blah blah blah. Like it's just all this craziness, right? And then he says, because he got caught in McDonald's, right? He came out with this whole thing of like, well, actually, McDonald's is a high vibrational spiritual place. Like honestly. And he says like the most high vibrational diet you can have is cheeseburgers and Diet Coke from McDonald's. And it's like protected by angels and it's an angelic space. Like just madness,
Wow.
just mad stuff.
Yeah,
And
that sounds pretty diluted. It doesn't sound very natural at all to like, yeah, restrict yourself so intensely and then just go eat the most processed stuff you can imagine.
yeah, and the dry fasting is another thing we don't talk about at the festival. Like I don't want that. And it's there's a woman that wanted to speak at the festival, got in touch with me, but I'm aware that she's a dry fasting advocate. And it bothers me because I'm like, she could be great as part of the festival. She originally comes from the UK. She's got a following online. She's a very eloquent person. I've met her. I like her as a person, but I said to her, like, I just don't want this message. You can't preach this message. And I think that she won't speak or won't be part of the festival as a result of that. And there's other people that have got in touch with me that I can tell they're just in that mentality of like, I want to just detox my body away. And I'm like, I don't want that to be the message. I want people to be thriving on this diet, not spending 3 years on a beach somewhere trying to like eat as little as possible. Like I don't like that.
Right. No, your festival and this community is about like, and this podcast is about fruit. It's about food. It's about the delicious, nourishing qualities of this natural, delicious,
Yeah.
epic
Well,
food. So like, let's keep celebrating that.
it's like the way I see it is with the breath. So I think it's really dangerous to set people away on a path that is impossible, right? And so having goals that are like impossible to fulfill, and I mean impossible, not difficult. Like the raw food diet is a challenge. That's a challenge for a person to change their diet. Even a
Hmm.
vegan diet for many people is a challenge. A plant-based diet is a challenge, but it is a challenge you can accomplish. It's it's difficult, but you can accomplish it. And to me, a breatharian thing is like it's not accomplishable. Like there is no path to what, or at least there's a. If you don't fully go raw, there's a path towards it. You can go half raw. You can start adding more smoothies into your life. You can go mostly vegan. Like there's benefits you can get by going towards that. There's no path towards breatharian. Like if someone is doing it, there's no step by step process. Like it's like, and that's what people think. They think there's like a step. Like if I do this dry fast and then I do this juice cleanse and I do this thing and I do mono fruit, and it's like no, like you're just gonna at the end of that be really hungry, probably going to go back to all the other foods that you ate. Then you're going to be depressed. Then you're going to think it's your fault. Then you're going to think you're the mistake. Like, no, it's just not a possible. Like, I remember just being on a call with a lady that said, "Could you give me some information about breatharians?" I was like, "It's just the problem is it's an impossible goal. Like, you cannot fulfill." Because she thought there was like these stages towards it. I'm like, "There's no stages. You're not going to get better at that." Like, um,
Yeah.
so to me, it's in the realm of miraculous. Uh, Not something anyone can work towards. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I
No,
think
I think that's a very responsible
it's great.
stance and approach, actually.
It's,
Um,
it's great.
setting reasonable goals for people is huge, and like if it's not attainable in this lifetime, like why worry about it?
I find it fascinating that people go, "Oh, I'm kind of interested in this raw food thing. I want to be a breatharian." Like, you wait a second. You just got into this, and all of a sudden you're talking about not eating any food. Like, where did that jump? There's so many people that make that jump. Like, they just jump towards the most absolute extreme thing they can find. Uh,
Right.
and and it's mad. And at the there's another story of the Dutch fruit festival. They had a I don't know they've got a different idea to me, but I wouldn't have let this guy speak, but they let a guy speak who talked about Breatharianism, and they said the guy uh, gave his talk, and they were listening to him, and then he said, "See you later, guys. I'm gonna go see my family. I'll probably have some pizza." And literally, like he told them he was going to go away and eat pizza. And he said, "But I don't eat that. I just do that to be part of my family." And we're like, "What? Why are you lecturing to, why are you talking to the people that are, the fruit eaters?" But, you know, it's, yeah, to me, it's what I would say about that topic. It is powerful. Like people are amazed by it, love it. They want to, they like it's some of those fasting in general is a magnetizing, like attractive topic because I've done fruit festivals, so I can see what audiences get inspired by. I can see what people like. That's why supplements are a big deal. You can talk about fruit all day long, but bring out a supplement, and everyone's like, you just see, you see, honestly, you see the body going. You can talk about durian, chempedak. People are all like, you're talking about the great fruits of the world. They're like, yeah, fruit, whatever. Because they're all, a lot of them are regular diet people. They're like, oh, yeah, fruit, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Bring out a supplement. They're like,
That's
what?
because we're still coming
Where
out
do I
of
get
this
it?
like scientific, like supplement based
Like,
culture.
take my money. Take my money. Where do I get that stuff? Where's the magic stuff in the powder and the thing? You're like, no, don't. That's don't. I'm saying don't have that. Don't have that powder in the thing. You don't need it. There's that.
Right.
We did it. We did an event, and I saw this happen. Right, we did an event, small event in London, and some of the guys from the festival were speaking at it. And a guy called Elliot was talking about his lifestyle, and everyone's sitting back, they're watching. He's talking about the diet and he's talking about different stuff in his lifestyle. And he puts up a picture of his room and there's like fruits and stuff. And then there was Daily Green Boost, like a jar of daily, but it kind of in the background, right, of this picture. And honestly, I just saw this audience of people like go, wait, where do you get that? I didn't know that was available in this country. And like, and I'm sitting there going, I can't believe it. A whole weekend we're trying to tell people about the fruit diet and everything. And a Daily Green Boost comes out and people are like, where do I buy that? You know?
Ronnie, I think we need a couple generations for people to unlearn like this attachment to supplementation. No, I'm serious. Drugs and pills have always been the first line of defense, always in our modern, westernized, industrialized culture. And I think we need a few generations to sort of undo that. There's a lot of things I think we're coming into now, even knowledge of our debt slavery in the monetary system, for example. People are starting to learn how to separate their public name from their private life. But we're going to need a few generations for that to catch on, for our kids to come up and understand that before, I feel like I just came into this world of raw food and unlearning a lot of the Western medical spells that we're under, such as like drugs and supplements are the answer. So yeah, I just think we need time. We just need you to keep spreading your message. And within a few generations, I think we'll look at the bottles of green powder and be like,
We need, yeah,
for an emergency or for like a special case, maybe, but like, let's just eat this fresh stuff.
I think we need leadership. We need people. I said this to someone the other day. I said, I was using the word we should, like the leaders should get out there, get the message out there more. And he sort of went, his reaction was, yeah, I don't believe in the words need and should or something like that. One a guy who's fairly prominent in
Mm-hmm.
in the in this community, and we were talking about a baby that died because of like it was this Russian family that were trying to like make their baby like breatharian. And in my reaction to it, I said, this is terrible or not. I said, because he responded to something, I said, yeah, we need to get this message out, the right raw message out there. There's this bad raw message. And he went, yeah, I get you. I don't really believe in need or should. I'm like, it's there's so many people that are not seeing. I don't, yeah, and I get it. We don't need or should or whatever to do that, but there's such a gap there. The world's looking for really good leadership
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to diet, lifestyle, and there's so many people out there that have a bad message. So many bad messages. The most prominent, a guy has become really prominent in the UK and maybe other parts of the world. Um, for his diet information. He's going viral, heavily viral right now. Eats like 6 eggs a day, meat, barely eats any fruit. And he basically his content was going viral because he was going into supermarkets and going, this is all rubbish, eat real food. And for him, real food is like, cheese and butter and eggs and
Right.
whatever, right? And I'm like, these guys are getting a message out there, and they're not holding back, and it's a totally terrible message. It's a
No,
totally
Ronnie, I agree with you. We do need and we should be spreading these messages. The whole idea that should is a bad word. Now, I half agree with that. Should in the past tense,
right.
there's no place for that in my life. Oh, I should have got this. Oh, I should have said this. This doesn't serve you because the past happened. There's no changing it. What we need to do is look forward. And if so, I say you should all you want, only if it's in the future tense.
I like that, and I've just felt, I've personally felt all my life I've had a little bit of a feeling of like a lack of leadership. I think there's something in our culture now of like a lack of pride and people standing up and being strong leaders and stuff, and because we tend to look at power as like a bad thing sometimes, but I'm just talking about the leadership of someone that has a great idea that can help people with that idea and bring it into their life and stuff, and bring community together. And a lot of the social media people that they've built a great audience and they've done a good job doing that. But it's like, what else have they done? They've sold a book, maybe a course, maybe coaching. They're making a living doing it. Great. And like they've got, some of them got hundreds of thousands, millions of followers. Do something. Like do something significant. And I just, a lot of them don't even do anything in their local community, in their local town, in the place they live. They don't have a meetup. It's like, what is that? To me, that I don't understand that. Like I think there's this weird thing of uh these people trying to do as little. A lot of people in the raw food scene, it's like they really want to maybe do as little as possible, make a living, and be on a beach somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And who cares about what happens to everyone else? I hate that attitude.
Right.
I think like we need to bring this to people. We need to, so this is and I get it. Like everyone wants an easy life. I don't dismiss that, but I think a life of like purpose, fulfillment, um, challenge, and
Mm-hmm.
like I've done the Fruit Festival, and I see these people with these massive followings. They do a retreat with 8 people. I'm like, I don't even have anywhere near the following, nowhere near the following these people have, and they have these like tiny events and charge loads of money for it, and and you're like, I don't know,
Well,
I feel disappointed by a lot of the people that I looked up to when I first came into this, right? And I'm like, they've not really moved on and done anything, and even social media wise, they've not really grabbed the thing. I don't know, it's just a rant, but um, I think the movement needs leadership, and that will bring in charismatic characters and people that are not scared to put this message into the mainstream and shake people up and say, "Listen, you guys are all wrong. Like this
right.
is the right message. Like the guy that's talking about 6 eggs, like that's going to kill people. Like, and I'm not talking. That's a bit bad for you. That message is killing people, leading to disability, leading to death, like leading to pain on a huge scale, trauma
Mm-hmm.
on a huge scale. Um, yeah, so
Yeah.
that's where my passion comes from. I just like there's so many sick people, so many people in pain.
Agreed, man.
Like,
Agreed. And we need people to be authentic. We need these leaders or anyone talking into the camera, talking into the microphone to be real and authentic. I think a lot of people try to uphold a certain image
yeah,
at the expense of truth. And so,
yeah,
for someone, it might make them feel better to protect their image and say, oh, I've been raw for 5 years, but they don't want to talk about the time they slipped up and cheated. They don't want to talk about the burrito they had last night, but I think we need more people to just be honest about the struggles, about the reality, what they experience, because authenticity, there's nothing that beats that. And you can really tell
yeah.
the message when someone's being authentic. They're just vibrating at this really resonant frequency.
The funny thing about a lot of the genuine long-term raw people I know, some of them I can't get them to do. Some of them I can't. A couple of them I can't get them to do an interview. A bunch of them they just don't want to do an interview. They're not interested. Um, a bunch of them do not do anything in terms of books or putting information out there. Nothing like that. They're just not that interested in it. And that's the funny thing about this diet. Once you get this down, it's not a big deal.
You're
And
just living.
It's just, yeah, it's just living, and they don't think about it as being in, and sometimes it's a struggle even with raw food speakers to get them to talk about the diet. Like if even if you look at Woodstock and some of the talks, if you look through some of the talks list, you'd be like, there's a whole bunch of talks that are nothing to do with the diet, because even those raw food speakers think this isn't a big deal. I want to talk about these other interesting topics like breath work or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
but Seth, like, what I want to do is this has been a really long interview, and I want to bring it to a close. And I think we could do this again, maybe, and do a part two or something, because there's a lot to continue to talk about. But I do want to promote the book. It's an excellent piece of work. It's really well made. I'm really glad I've got a copy of it, and I think a lot of people will benefit from that. So just remind people of where that can be found. Fruitcompanion.com, is it?
Yes, thank you so much. It's thefruitcompanion.com. Search The Fruit Companion on Amazon. I'm also on Instagram at The Fruit Companion, or my publisher page, Radical Health Zine, Z-I-N-E. And I post other stuff around health, not just fruit, on that page. But yeah, pick up the paperback. It ships internationally, or pick up download the PDF. And I hope people get good use out of it. And I really appreciate the feedback so far. It's been really nice.
Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and we'll see you on another episode of the Love Fruit podcast. Check out Seth Bailin, The Fruit Companion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronnie.